I thought the Raiders were going to be a competitive football team this year with the hiring of Pete Carroll as the head coach and bringing in John Spyatek as the GM, trading for Geno Smith. I felt all of the parts were there for the Raiders to be a team that could win 7-8 games, pull off a few upsets, and be able to hang around with teams like Kansas City and some of the better teams in the NFL. But that has not been the case. And the Raiders have been just as bad, if not worse, this season than what they were with Antonio Pierce. And if the Raiders were going to continue to play the way that they have so far this season, they might as well have just stuck with Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce had the Raiders in more close games than what Pete Carroll has had this team in this season. The Raiders' point differential under Antonio Pierce last year was 7.4. With Pete Carroll, it's gone up to 11. So you're losing games by 2 possessions versus when you had AP as your head coach, only losing games by 1 possession. And when you hire a 74-year-old head coach, you kind of expect an instant turnaround. Now, of course, you were never going to make it to the playoffs. The roster just isn't that good. But defensively, the Raiders have been even worse on this side of the ball than what they were last season. And Pete Carroll is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach. So you got an aging head coach along with a quarterback that has led the league in turnovers and has gifted 44 points to the opposition. This has been a complete train wreck. And right now, the Raiders have more questions about the future than they have answers. What are you going to do with Geno Smith? Geno Smith is grits. He's making more money than Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Daniel Jones. And not only has he been worse than those guys, but he's been the bottom 4 quarterback in the league. And you just can't easily move on from him due to the cap hit that you're going to have to take by releasing him, and also the amount of guaranteed money that you've given him. And I believe when Aiden O'Connell is able to return from his injury, he should be starting over Geno Smith. At least Aiden O'Connell doesn't turn the football over at the rate that Geno Smith does. Now, you can say that Geno Smith hasn't had all of his weapons. Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers have missed a significant amount of time this season. That still is no excuse for how bad Geno Smith has played. Geno Smith was supposed to stabilize the quarterback position for the Raiders this year, and he's done all but that. And now the Raiders are going to be right back at the drawing board this offseason trying to find a solution to their quarterback problem that they've dealt with ever since they shipped away Derek Carr and they pushed him away. Are you going to draft a quarterback this year? You have no choice but to. And the Raiders weren't expecting to have to draft a young quarterback having Geno Smith. Geno Smith was at least supposed to give them 2-3 years of consistent quarterback play before they even entertained the idea of drafting a young quarterback to sit behind him. But now when next year's draft comes around, no matter how bad the quarterback class is, you got to draft a quarterback in the first round. You just have to, whether that be Mendoza, Jenemayava, Dante Moore. The Raiders can't go into the 2026 season without a young quarterback sitting behind Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been atrocious. And when you got a struggling defense, having Geno and all of these turnovers doesn't do them any favors as well. And you're entertaining the idea of possibly shipping away Maxx Crosby, which should never even be brought up. Maxx Crosby wants to retire a Las Vegas Raider. You don't see too many players this dedicated to an organization that has been in the gutter for as long as what the Raiders have. He has the Raiders tattooed on him. So Maxx Crosby should never be thought about in trade talks. This should be the only untouchable player that the Raiders have, not named Ashton Jeanty. And you drive Ashton Jeanty with your first round pick and you put him behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And then you had Chip Kelly trying to tweak with his stance when the stance didn't need to be tweaked at all. You see, ever since Ashton Jeanty has gone back to his Michael Myers stance, he's been crushing everybody when the offensive line has been able to give him some running lanes to run through. So the Raiders right now, their future looks really horrendous at the moment. You got a 74-year-old head coach who has this team far away from competing. Right now, the Raiders are not only the worst team in the AFC West, but they're a bottom 4 team in the NFL in terms of talent. You don't have a lot of high-end players at a bunch of positions. And even though you got a lot of cap space and a lot of money to spend in free agency next year, there's no guarantee that guys are going to want to come play for the Raiders. There's no guarantee that you're going to hit on a bunch of those free agency signings. And even if you are able to significantly improve this team, you could still be the worst team in this division because the Chiefs have reloaded and they're as good as what they've been in a very long time. And that's scary because they've been to the AFC Championship for a decade at this point. And the past 3 seasons were the worst that the Chiefs were ever going to look. They fixed the offensive line. They got the receiving core in check. And they got a healthy Rashee Rice. And Mahomes is back playing MVP football again. The Chargers would have been a lot better than what they are right now had it not be for the injury bug just completely destroying their offensive line and ravaging their defense. And the Broncos are 5-2. Most of their team is fairly young, and they got a lot of money to spend in free agency next year as well, with them having Bo Nix on a rookie deal. So even if you make a lot of investment into this team next offseason, there still is no guarantee that that's going to be enough to get you into the playoffs when you have a head coach that just looks like his best days are behind him. If you specialize in a particular side of the football as a head coach, and that happens to be the worst area of your team, you're not a good coach. Pete Carroll is no longer a good coach. You can make all these excuses in the world. We don't have this. We don't have that. Look what Robert Saleh and the 49ers are doing. Down there, 2 best players, and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. Those are 2 of the best players in the league at their respective positions, and yet their defense still hasn't missed a beat in spite of those losses. Because Robert Saleh is a good defensive coordinator. Maybe the Raiders should fire Pete Carroll after this season and hire Robert Saleh, because he seems like he has a better understanding on defense and what makes a great defense than what Pete Carroll does. And when Pete Carroll got pushed out of Seattle, their defense was one of the worst in the NFL. The Seahawks defense has been bottom 5 the last couple of years that Pete Carroll was there. So I never really understood the hiring of Pete Carroll, but I got behind it because when you've been in the gutter as long as what the Raiders have, a guy like Pete Carroll that has this uppity-go attitude, that's very energetic, he's easy to root for. He's easy to rally behind. But the Raiders won the offseason, but the offseason hype isn't playing out how it was supposed to on the field. And I'm not saying that I expected for the Raiders to be a playoff team, but I thought this would be a team that would be competitive. I wasn't expecting them to get blown out by Kansas City. Last year, Antonio Pierce had this team really close to beating Kansas City. If it wasn't for a botched exchange between Aiden O'Connell and the center, they probably ended up winning that game on Black Friday. There were a bunch of close games that the Raiders had the opportunity to win with Antonio Pierce. And if he was given a second season, you would have to think that maybe this team would have been in much better shape than what it currently is right now.